Welcome to CWI's 2021 Compliance Refresher Training. We're required by law to provide you with periodic reminders related to your work environment here at CWI. So let's begin. Training objectives are to keep you informed and knowledgeable about the compliance program, including mentioning the code of conduct and conflict of interest policies, discuss information security, including HIPAA privacy and security issues, keep you mindful of our regulatory environment and Medicaid documentation requirements, keeping you aware of your obligations concerning fraud, waste, and abuse, and remind you of state and federal false claims laws and your related responsibilities. The main purpose of our compliance program is to prevent compliance violations, detect them if they do occur, and correct any problems that we identify. That's why we have training, and we do periodic checking and testing to see if everything's going on as planned. Compliance and ethics. Again, there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. And it's not only doing things because it's required, it's doing them because it's the right thing to do ethically, as embodied in our code of conduct. We at CWI are committed to complying with all applicable federal and state laws, rules, regulations, standards, and other compliance requirements, and won't tolerate any unethical or illegal activities. Think about compliance and quality assurance violations like weeds in a garden of laws, rules, and regulations. Everyone at orientation training is provided a copy of our code of conduct. It applies to all employees, vendors, and independent contractors, sets forth our commitment to compliance, communicates our commitment to comply with all federal, state laws, standards, regulations, addresses confidentiality and privacy issues, which is very important, summarizes our key corporate policies, including the false claims laws and whistleblower policies that we have to adhere to. The code provides examples of bad behaviors that we should avoid at the workplace. It addresses conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed promptly. And failure to comply is a serious matter. It could lead up to disciplinary action, up to and including termination. So make sure that you know our code of conduct, what it contains, and what it requires of you in your job. We expect you to know and follow the rules related to your job and be aware of and report any potential compliance concerns. Things such as unethical or illegal behavior, unfair or discriminatory treatment of individuals, billing or coding errors, unauthorized use or disclosure of protected health information, misuse of CWI property or supplies, and any instances of fraud, waste, or abuse that you might become aware of. Records and documentation. All information created or used in the course of a CWI business function or transactions are our records. CWI continues to expand upon electronic record keeping whenever practical. We've got electronic visit verification, for example, that we've implemented. And although a lot of what we document is electronically recorded, there are still areas of concern that need to be considered. Here's some things to pay attention to as you record your daily activities, especially as they relate to the services you provide. Take some time to be clear about what you're documenting. Electronic records don't eradicate human error. If it's not written or documented, it didn't happen. Quality is important. Garbage in equals garbage out. Being timely is critical. Meeting your deadlines, monthly summaries, preparing and sharing staff action plans, documenting by the end of your shift. Be aware of your HIPAA responsibilities, the access to and security of records. Make sure you encrypt email with protected health information or personally identifiable information with CWI Secure. And don't keep sensitive data on a local drive or personal device. Be aware that almost everything related to the services we provide are subject to HIPAA rules and regulations. The privacy rule requires that all protected health information that we or our business associates possess or transmit in any form, whether electronic, paper, or oral, must be properly protected. The HIPAA security rule requires us to have physical and technical safeguards to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of protected health information. The HITECH Act of 2009 includes a breach notification rule which requires us to provide notice following any breach of unsecured PHI. Some information security and HIPAA reminders. Always safeguard the personal information of individuals we serve and your fellow workforce members, whether that's oral, written, electronic, pictures. Follow the minimum necessary rule when accessing information. Is the information necessary for your job? If it isn't, then you don't need to be looking at it. Refer complaints or requests immediately to the privacy officer, that's the Director of Quality Assurance, April Boucher, or the compliance officer, that's me, Carl Smazinski. Report any actual or potential violations of policies and procedures and practices promptly to the privacy officer, compliance officer, or your supervisors, and be familiar with and comply with our HIPAA policies and procedures. Some reminders, some don'ts. Don't reveal passwords to others or allow the use of your account by others, including family and other household members when you're working at home. Don't provide information about or lists of CWI clients or employees to parties outside CWI. Don't discuss or post protected health information or personally identifiable information on social media websites. For example, Joe Smith from the IRAs in the hospital. That's not something you want to be posting. Keep photos containing PHI on your personal devices. Don't do that. Here are Medicaid fraud and abuse examples, a number of which particularly apply to what we do here. Billing for services or supplies not actually provided or furnished, signing blank records, falsifying information on records, charging excessively for services or supplies, providing services that don't meet professional standards, assigning procedure codes that aren't based on the actual services performed. These are things that constitute Medicaid fraud, waste, and abuse. By now, you should all be aware of the federal and state False Claims Acts and penalties that are provided. There are stiff penalties for submitting claims to the government that you know or should know are false, basically billing for services that weren't provided. Submitting false records in order to obtain payment from the government, records that you know or should know are false. And receiving government payments that you're not entitled to and ignoring the fact that it's an identified overpayment. It's a violation of federal and state law to submit claims for payment with false and untrue information. Penalties for violations include civil penalties plus 3 times the amount of damages. If you have questions, you can refer to CWI's corporate manual and our policies for both the federal and New York False Claims Acts and whistleblower protections. Speaking of whistleblower protections, no one will be punished or terminated for calling our hotline or reporting a compliance-related problem. We want you to report any instances of fraud, waste, or abuse or concerns related to fraud, waste, or abuse. Whistleblower protections will be afforded to any employee who in good faith reports or undertakes other actions available to help ensure that our billing and other practices are appropriate. If you're confronted with a situation and you're unsure of whether it's a compliance violation or not, ask. You can start off asking your supervisor, or you can go to the human resources staff or the compliance and quality assurance staff to ask your questions. You can also contact us through the compliance hotline if you want to remain anonymous. But there's a lot of resources available to help you determine if there's laws, regulations, or procedures that would apply to a situation you're faced with. The key thing is to ask that question. We take compliance-related concerns seriously, and all reported concerns will be reviewed. Any violations brought to our attention will be looked into promptly and, if necessary, referred to the appropriate parties for help in resolving the problem. The reported information will be kept confidential to the extent possible and only shared with those individuals who need to know in order to conduct any investigations or correct the situation as required by law. If you have questions or concerns about compliance-related matters, here's how to get a hold of us. I'm the Compliance Officer, Carl Smazinski, the Director of Quality Assurance, April Boucher, our Quality Assurance Specialist, Jessica Wendron, and we're all at the Quality Assurance Corporate Compliance Offices at 16 Pearl Street in Glens Falls on the first floor. So if you need to get a hold of us, you have lots of ways you can do that.